From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Stefania Bravo, and this is From the South. The caravan of Central American migrants continues to move through Mexico, despite threats from the U.S. and Mexican governments to break it up. The caravan is made up of thousands of migrants fleeing violence and poverty in their homelands. They are still more than 1,000 miles from the U.S. border. Many people in Mexico are expressing their solidarity with the caravan.
The only thing I can say to people is that they should be more human, that we should look into our hearts and imagine ourselves in their shoes. Because what they're doing isn't easy. Us Mexicans like to criticize Donald Trump for the way he treats our people in the United States. And now we are acting just like him. We don't have any walls on our border, but sometimes we ourselves are the wall.
Babies and toddlers are part of the thousands-strong U.S.-bound migrant caravan. As they cross Mexico, many Central American migrants carry with them their infants and their hopes. Children who can walk remain close to their parents' side along the difficult journey. Dehydration and exhaustion are the most dangerous risks they face on their way towards a better future.
The children ask when we are going to arrive to the United States because they can't stand it anymore. They don't want to sleep here. They are hungry and tired.
They are exhausted, totally exhausted. We carry those who can't walk. We carry in our arms.
But Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto has said the caravan will not be able to cross the U.S. border.
Those who are part of this caravan are acting outside the law. I call on them to reconsider your decision, because if you continue with this, you will hardly be able to cross the United States or to legally stay in Mexico.
Our correspondent Pablo Perez is at the border between Guatemala and Mexico and brings us this report. It seems like we are having some technical issues. Let's go to another story. Hundreds of Honduran migrants are stuck between two countries.
They have spent more than 4 days here at the border between Guatemala and Mexico.
We want them to open the gate even if they let us through little by little. That is what we are asking God.
Help from the community has been fundamental to their survival. Travelers can get a meal at their makeshift camp thanks to their generosity.
We all been through this, all countries. We are having migrants sometime. My mom was a migrant.
People are still trying to make their way across the Suchiate River. The government of Honduras said that a large part of the caravan has already returned.
He's going to trick his people. Here we are the ones who are hungry, who don't have a job. We suffer each day in the country. There aren't any jobs unless you are with the ruling party.
Women, many of them with small children, say that traveling in large numbers makes them feel safe during the dangerous journey.
We are not going back because what we want is to work. We don't want to go back because there aren't any jobs there.
The president of Mexico, Enrique Peña Nieto, warned the migrants that they won't reach their destination illegally. After more than 10 days on the road and now being stranded at the border hasn't broken their morale. They remain determined.
And now let's go back to our correspondent Pablo Perez, who is at the border between Guatemala and Mexico and has this report for us.
I'm standing on the shore of the Suchiate River. As we can see behind me is the bridge that divides the two countries. Where I'm standing now is an area known as the Coyotes Crossing. Rafts called camaras continue to move back and forth. They not only carry passengers, but also merchandise. Many of the migrants who came here from Honduras, after seeing that the bridge crossing has been closed by Mexican authorities, decided to instead use these rafts to cross the river and continue on their trek towards the U.S.
We thank Pablo Perez for that report. After the warnings of U.S. President Donald Trump, migrants have called on Canada to provide them with asylum.
These people love Honduras, but they are here because the country has too many problems. They are refugees, and if they go back, they will be imprisoned or even killed. People are already receiving threats if they ever go back, so what we are asking the world, especially Canada, is to give us shelter, because we already know that in the United States, Donald Trump doesn't want us. The situation in Honduras is critical. That is why people are migrating. We ask for support from human rights organizations and for any country to give us political asylum.
But Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez says this migration flow is a shared responsibility.
We were the first, the Hondurans, to ask other countries for shared responsibility, because the migration is directly linked, among other factors, to the crossing of drugs through Central American countries, drugs that are produced in the south and are consumed in the north of the continent.
On their part, human rights organizations in Honduras have asked the Mexican government to protect migrants.
Children, teenagers, and senior citizens' lives are at risk. So we urge authorities to guarantee the right to safe migration and other human rights for our people.
I think Donald Trump's politics have increased migration. He's not stopping migrants. All those people's going won't stop. They're gonna continue advancing.
Social movements in Honduras plan to march from the city of La Barca to the capital Tegucigalpa to demand the resignation of President Juan Orlando Hernandez. Our correspondent Hugo Vera has the details.
We are in La Barca, about 4 hours far from Tegucigalpa. Social movements and citizens will start marching in a few hours to ask for the resignation of President Juan Orlando Hernandez. They said the president has to react to the situation the country is facing. They say Honduras is marred by corruption, which according to them has led to the massive exodus. Another issue they say is rampant is insecurity. These events have happened just as there are official calls for an investigation of Juan Orlando Hernandez for corruption.
Responda por lo que ellos consideran la situación del país.
The Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad has spoken out on lies about his life that he says were created as a campaign strategy by his opponent Jair Bolsonaro.
What they have done against me and my family does not make any sense. They reached a point in which they stole a Bible that was a gift to say they found it in the trash. The bishop who gave me that Bible came yesterday from Fortaleza to Sao Paulo to give me another Bible. They are really the worst of the worst. I am very sorry we have to go through all of this, because it is very sad. It is very sad what Bolsonaro represents.
And earlier we talked with Karina Duailibe, researcher in political science at the University of Brasilia, who told us about the rise of right-wing candidate Jair Bolsonaro.
Now, it's very shocking that we got this point, that having this far-right candidate that is openly despises democratic institutions and despises gender equality and despises have a racist and has a homophobic point of views and is gaining support.
More than 147 million Brazilians will choose the country's 38th president. So what are the top of voters' minds and how exactly do they rate the campaign promises of Jair Bolsonaro and Fernando Haddad? More on this in our special series, Brazil Decides.
In this runoff election, no doubt, the stakes are high for Latin America's largest economy. On the one hand, we have Jair Bolsonaro, who is promising to privatize every state company and become closer to the United States. On the other, we have Fernando Haddad, who is promising tax reforms to benefit the most vulnerable and enhance the country's visibility in different international blocs. But what do Brazilians think about these two very different policies?
We are already struggling, and privatization will make everything worse.
Privatization causes unemployment. Every voter has to analyze each proposal and see what is best for Brazil.
Voters are also worried about Brazil's sovereignty.
Unfortunately, I will give my vote to the Workers' Party, but not because I support them, but because there is no other choice. I am against selling the best that the country has. And that is why I am not supporting Bolsonaro.
Privatizing our resources is just an international demand to enter our country.
Experts are also thinking about Brazil's international influence if Bolsonaro assumes office.
He hasn't been clear about his international stance. That is, how he wants to position the country internationally. He hasn't explained any international policy that is not linked to the countries of the North.
Now the fate of Brazil is in the hands of the voters, who will decide their future on October 28th.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands of people in Venezuela have been affected by torrential rain. Capital Caracas has seen heavy floodings in the past days as river banks burst. Hundreds of people have been evacuated from their homes. Authorities have opened 400 shelters around the country for those in need.
We are looking closely at the Guaire River that crosses the city. We are using special technology to measure its water levels. The Intertropical Convergence Zone has brought torrential rain to parts of the eastern and southern Caribbean. On Monday, more than 90 millimeters of rain fell in Caracas. The National Emergency System is monitoring weather conditions in order to ensure to safeguard people. The impact of global warming is undeniable in this situation.
Several urban farmers in Venezuela are sowing seeds of hope and a new agricultural revolution as they harvested produce from more than 40,000 hectares of farmland.
This is how a so-called Mountain Fighters Day begins in Cacique Tuna, right here in the heart of Caracas. A sizable harvest of vegetables and fruits grown on 12 hectares of land will now be distributed for sale to thousands of families.
Good morning, friends. How are you?
What are we going to do today?
Well, we are going to plant paprika and afterwards we will cut the seeds. What we are doing is offering agriculture classes in schools. This is directly from the producer to the community.
Kriberth is one of 18 farmers who lives on this land.
I came to visit my family and I found this beautiful farmland. My family is working here and I am fighting here with them.
Blades, seeds, and their bare hands are the only tools these farmers are using to cultivate the land. Luis wants to keep developing a strong culture of farming the land, thereby helping the community.
Here in Caracas, there are people who work. We want to open an exchange with other farmers so we can all sell high-quality crops that Venezuelans deserve. So we want to bring together all farmers here in Caracas.
This Cacique Tuna community can be an example to the rest of the country's farming sector. It also promotes farming not only in the countryside but also in the city.
Hurricane Willa is about to make landfall on Mexico's Pacific coast as residents prepare for high winds and heavy rains. People in Mazatlan have sealed off their windows and doors with wooden planks. Willa is forecast to be one of the most powerful hurricanes to enter Mexico from the Pacific in recent years. Pope Francis has sent a message of solidarity to the people of Trinidad and Tobago after the recent earthquakes and floods. 2 quakes shook the Twin Island over the past weekend, while it was still reeling from the effects of severe floods. The telegram from the Vatican reads, "Having learned of the destruction of property caused by the earthquakes and floods in Trinidad and Tobago, His Holiness Pope Francis expresses solidarity with all those affected by these natural disasters." Moving on, former Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa has talked about WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange and the possibility to be handed over to the U.S. government after leaving the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
It is taken very seriously because there is an agreement between the Ecuadorian government with the American government. We were visited by Vice President Mike Pence several months ago, and they agreed this to turn over Assange, among other things, for instance, to end the Chevron affair and to isolate Venezuela. So it's part of an agreement already set, so they are following this agreement. So it's very serious. They try to humiliate Assange, and they are humiliating themselves. They are humiliating Ecuador, my country, because they are, these rules are really against human rights, and they are trying to isolate Assange and to push him to abandon our embassy.
Colombian teachers' unions are staging a 24-hour national strike to demand a better budget for public education. About 220,000 teachers are marching in different cities across Colombia. Protesters want the government of Iván Duque to comply with agreements made to increase the budget signed back in June 2017. Our correspondent in Bogotá, José Manuel Jiménez, has more on the strike.
The nationwide teacher strike has started in Colombia. It will last for 24 hours as teachers demand that the government upholds previous budget agreements made last year. Unions insist that this is the duty of the government, and they say they need to improve the infrastructure of many schools now falling apart. They also demand that policies be put in place to guarantee public education for all, regardless of who's in power. This strike is happening on the heels of the murder of a teacher and indigenous social leader, José Domingo Ulcua, in the department of Santander. Teachers in the region continue to be threatened and be victimized in the armed conflict. In 2018 alone, 173 social leaders have been killed. Today's demonstrations began here, outside the Ministry of Education, and will make its way to Plaza Bolívar.
And staying in Colombia on the eve of the teacher strike, yet another social leader has been murdered in the country. Indigenous teacher José Domingo Ulcua was shot in the chest in the department of Santander. He's the 31st social leader to lose his life since Iván Duque took office last August. The Argentinian lawmaker Máximo Kirchner, son of the former president Néstor and Cristina Kirchner, has appeared in court in a corruption case. He is being investigated in a case known as Key Notebooks, along with his mother, brother, and several other people. It is alleged that they ran a criminal organization involved in money laundering. Both Máximo and his mother deny any wrongdoing. They argue the case is part of a wider trend to try to smear progressive leaders through the courts. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. United States National Security Advisor John Bolton visited Russia on Tuesday. He met with President Vladimir Putin to discuss the deteriorating relationship between both nations. Putin expressed regret at recent U.S. sanctions, while Bolton assured him President Trump wishes to work things out.
Frankly speaking, it is sometimes surprising for us to see the United States taking unprovoked steps against Russia, which we cannot call friendly. Basically, we don't even respond to any of your steps, but it still goes on and on.
And to begin, as you indicated, I think President Trump would look forward to seeing you in Paris on the sideline of the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the armistice. Because despite our differences, which exist because of our different national interests, it's still important to work in areas where there's a possibility of mutual cooperation.
Zimbabwean opposition leader Nelson Chamisa has called for a dialogue with the government to resolve the country's worsening economic crisis. Chamisa has accused President Emerson Mnangagwa of failing to take action, leading to an economic meltdown that has caused severe shortages. The deepening economic crisis comes less than 3 months after Mnangagwa won the general elections in July.
What is definitely clear is that there is absence of leadership. The nation is orphaned. The nation is parentless. And what is necessitated this is obviously the conduct and behavior of Mr. Mnangagwa and his team.
Police in South Africa have used rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse crowds in the Johannesburg Central Business District. According to the police, protesters against drugs and drug dealers started acting violently when they had to step in. Nigerian business owners in the area have described the violent protests as racist attacks, as they had been unfairly targeted by the protesters. Now let's take a look at what other headlines are making headlines around the world.
Over 100,000 workers have taken to the streets of Melbourne, Australia to demand a pay rise and equal working conditions. The Australian Council of Trade Unions mobilised workers to call for a change in government.
We will mobilise our supporters to throw out this unfair government and their unfair rules and put in place a federal government that will deliver fair funding for public education.
A car bomb has killed 6 people and wounded 30 in the Iraqi town of Qayyara. 2 soldiers were among the dead. The car was parked near a restaurant in a crowded market. Several vehicles were set ablaze. Although no group has claimed responsibility for the attack, a top military commander blames the Islamic State. Federal agents have been investigating an explosive device left in the mailbox of a New York home owned by billionaire financier George Soros. An employee at the home opened a package to find what appeared to be a bomb. It was detonated by the bomb squad in a nearby forest. The device is still under investigation and is being treated as a possible improvised device. Soros' funding of liberal causes and groups has led him to become a hated figure among some activists. A group of migrants have set up a makeshift camp in a Bosnian village close to the Croatian border. They arrived a day earlier in an attempt to cross the border because, according to some of the migrants, conditions of their temporary shelters were dire. A Syrian refugee said, quote, "It is surrounded by bad people from all nations. The situation there is full of fighting, stealing, attacking people, everything."
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.